Welcome to Kutxi, a podcast where people from endangered, indigenous and minoritized language communities come together to share their experiences, challenges and hopes for the future. Kutxi grew out of conversations sparked at IGA 2025, the international meeting of young speakers of minority languages. There, young speakers and activists from language communities around the world came together to share ideas, stories and reflections on language, identity, community and revitalization. Very quickly, it became clear that these were conversations worth continuing beyond the summit itself. And that is how Kutxi was born. So why Kutxi? Because we did not want to wait for another gathering to keep these conversations going. We wanted to create a space where we could stay connected, learn from one another, and reflect together on the many realities our communities face across different parts of the world. In each episode, we explore a specific topic with different guests, each speaking from their own lived experience. We and our guests speak as individuals and as members of our communities, not as representatives of entire peoples or languages. Our hope is to create honest and thoughtful conversations that build connections across communities and offer listeners a window into the diversity of experiences within endangered and minoritized language spaces. Some topics may return across multiple episodes, especially when there is a lot of interest, and while we would love to include as many voices as possible, episodes will usually feature up to 3 speakers, so that each conversation has space to unfold naturally. One final note before we begin. For now, Kutxi is recorded in English, though we hope to expand into Spanish in the future. With that, welcome to Kutxi. In today's episode, we're talking about self-identity. What does it mean to be part of a minoritized language community, and how do language, culture, and belonging shape the way we see ourselves? This is a part 1 of a 2-part episode. Both parts explore the same theme, but feature different participants and perspectives. We are joined by Luka Golinski, a member of the Lower Sorbian community, a filmmaker, a visual artist, and a member of Vacuum, a collective for Sorbian art and subculture. We are also joined by Radna Poskhodiev, a Buryat language activist and teacher who has lived in many parts of the world while maintaining a deep connection to his roots. Last but not least, we have Maddi Kintana, a Basque speaker from Donostia, a Basque language teacher, and a PhD student in Basque linguistics. In this episode, our participants share what it means to them to be members of their language communities. We explore how language plays a central role in their identities, and how factors such as ethnic background or current place of residence often become secondary, as long as there is a shared commitment to keep the language alive.
Today we are talking about self-identity, and for this episode we have here Radna and Luka. So first of all, we're going to introduce ourselves to get to know each one a little bit better. So Radna, could you start introducing yourself first in your language and then in English?
Сайн нөхөд би Радна гэж нэртэйг би улаан удад байдаг би Buryat улстай ород гүрэндэ би баржны Buryat би тэгээд л бүхэл наганда улаан удад байгаа би тэгээд л их наганда Санкт-Петербургда нүжитэндэ дээд хургуулия дүргээ би so it means my name is Radna. I'm from Ulan-Ude. It is my hometown. This is capital of Republic of Buryat, the region in Russia, the Asian part of Russia, southeastern region in Siberia. So it is really far from Moscow, but it's close to Lake Baikal. So basically we are famous about it. So I told you about my language, this actually Asian language by Altai group of languages and Mongolian group within the Altai big family. So we are relatives with 2 other Mongolian languages. The closest one, it is Mongolian from Mongolia. We have south border with Mongolia, so we're it is our state border. And the western Mongolians called Kalmyks, they are also our relatives. So we are basically 3 ethnic groups. We are big Mongolian groups, ancestors of Genghis Khan, to be honest.
To ja mężem. Ja sam Luka, ja przyjeżdżam ze Służycy, Ze zbliskości Cheszebuza, a ja som łużykański Serb. To minorizowana kubka, ako ja żywa w Łużycy, w Niemskiej, aber w nentechnych niemskich stronach. Yeah, I think that's enough for Sorbian, and I'm gonna translate. My name is Luka, and I'm part of the Sorbian minoritized group that lives in Lusatia in Germany, or what is currently German borders. And yeah, we're a minoritized group, obviously, minoritized languages. There's two Sorbian languages, Upper and Lower Sorbian. At least that's what's usually said. Actually, there's also a third, very small Sorbian language in between Upper and Lower Sorbian. And generally, there's dialects around the border between Upper and Lower Sorbian. So, borders are kind of flowing with it. And the Sorbian languages are Slavic languages. They're more similar to Polish and Czech, and are also spoken in the areas of Germany that are close to the Polish and Czech borders. I speak Lower Sorbian, which is the smaller of the two big languages and the one that is more endangered, or that is considered more endangered. It's hard to find official numbers of speakers, because what is a speaker, right? And it's hard to define. But the latest, I think, official study that is usually quoted on Wikipedia, for example, says around 5,000 speakers. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I find it hard to say. It could be more, it could be less. But yeah, just in that ballpark somewhere.
Kaixo, Maddi naiz, Donostiakoa naiz, baina Baionan bizi naiz, Euskalduna naiz, ari naiz egiten doktoretza bat Euskal gazteen hizkeraren inguruan, eta AEkan Euskal irakasle naiz, era berean. So, my name's Maddi. I'm from the Basque country. I'm from Donostia, San Sebastian in English, and I currently live in Bayona. So, I'm a Basque teacher for adults in an association, and I'm also currently doing a PhD in Basque linguistics. And what about Basque? Well, Basque is a language isolate. It's not related to any language in the world. It was here, or like a Proto-Basque was here before all the languages that exist nowadays in Europe were here. So yeah, we are kind of a vestige of what free Indo-European Europe was like. And it is spoken in the Basque country. We call it Euskal Herria. It is nestled between France and Spain in the Atlantic coast, and in the Pyrenees. It is really small, really mountainous. And we are currently divided in two, in the northern Basque country, which is under French administration or occupation, and southern Basque country, which is under Spanish occupation. And yeah, we are around 700,000 speakers, but again, as Luka said, it is also hard to determine what a speaker is. And I guess we're gonna find out a little bit of our opinions about it. I wanted to ask you, maybe we will do like this little segment for 10 minutes max, and then we will go to the main topic. But I think it is quite an interesting question to ask both of you, and also I think your upbringings are quite different in that sense. If you were raised in your language, and if you weren't, like, how did you learn the language? So, Radna, could you answer the question first?
So I think I was very lucky to be raised in my own culture, in my own language, because Buryat language for me is my mother tongue. It was my first language before Russian. So, for example, when I visited first time our kindergarten, I didn't know the no words in Russian, you know. So, why I'm so lucky, even if I were raised in the capital, in the city, my mom always talked to me in Buryat language. And each summer I have visited the countryside to my grandparents. So that's why I'm super lucky about that. But for example, my classmates and my friends, mostly who don't have this experience, they are like classic example of Buryats who raised in the city. They don't know much their own language, less tradition. They still have like basic of them, but like it's more or less they're not into the culture as me. So like I think I'm like maybe an example or exception of Buryats who has still their own traditions, you know.
And maybe did you like that's also because I saw that there are like some schools in Buryat. Could you learn also Buryat at school or not? In your case?
Yeah, Yeah, we have like 2 hours per week for Buryat language. It is before 2014. It was mandatory in Buryat, in Republic of Buryatia. But after 2014, like after a new wave of centralization in Russia, because to be like, if you are a historian, when Russia become more centralized, it means like it is more autocratic, So this is two lines. Also, all the time they are connected. So that's why centralizing means like less hours to Buryat language and more to Russian. And after this, it became optional. For example, even Buryat parents, they can choose their languages. For example, they can learn only Russian, for example. Yeah,
Okay.
but before 2014, it was mandatory for me, for
Okay,
all
so you
students.
were
Yeah,
lucky in
because
your case.
yeah, I was lucky, but 2 hours is not enough, I think.
Well, thank you so much for your background. So, Luca, what's your case?
My case is much more complicated, unfortunately, and I'll try to keep it short. I was not directly raised in the language, and I was also not, I was kind of raised with a cultural understanding of the traditions, of the fact that the traditions we were partaking in were Sorbian, but I was definitely raised with Sorbian tradition and with a Sorbian way of life. It's just that I come from a region where most Serbian culture has been assimilated and Germanized in a way, which of course hasn't happened just out of coincidence. It was a political step as well. So most people, including my family, were more of the idea or the thought, yeah, we used to be Sorbian and there's Sorbian history here, but right now we're more German. Then there's also the case that, or to add on, I didn't have the option to learn it in school because my family moved and I grew up and went to school outside of the Sorbian settlement area, even though my family originates from the Sorbian settlement area and I also identify with that being my hometown. So there weren't much options to learn my language other than some words I heard when I was visiting my grandma as well in the countryside, or trying to connect with it whenever I was there. And I moved back after I finished school and then decided that I wanted to learn more about my culture, be more active in my culture as well. I joined a Sorbian art collective, and that's kind of also what pushed me to realize, hey, to be active in my culture, I need to learn the language. It's part of the identity, and for me, it was clear very quickly that I had to learn it. There was no way around it, and I also viewed it as something that absolutely had to happen. And the fact that I couldn't speak it yet felt like something that had been taken from me by colonization. And that's why I tried to learn it a bit on my own. Didn't really wasn't very successful with that, but exactly in that year, the language revitalization project Zoria started, and I applied, got in, and then spent the next 10 months learning Sorbian for 6 hours every day in an immersive setting. And I think for me, that's absolutely the best way I could have learned it. I speak it fluently now. I work in the language. I live in the language. I speak it daily. And I'm super happy that I got to reclaim a language that, while it isn't technically my mother tongue, I still view as my mother language as well. Because I might not have had a choice culturally and not speaking it, but I speak it now. And it feels more like home to me than German does.
That's such a beautiful answer. Like that resonates to me also a lot with a lot of people from here. So I think there is a shared understanding of that.
So, Maddi, what was it like for you? Did you grow up with it? Did you learn it? What's the situation?
Yeah, well, I wasn't born in the Basque country for well, some other reasons, but my parents spoke to me always in Euskera in Basque. My mom learned it when she was older, like in a program as you did. And my dad is a well L1 speaker of Euskera, but they both of them like always try to speak to us in Basque and also like tell us like how important it was and vital it was for us to speak Euskera, that it was a key point of our identity and also well, our fight. And so I that's my L1. I speak better Basque than Spanish or French. That's for sure. And I also didn't know any Spanish till I arrived to school, so I can understand to Radna in that sense. And what else? Yeah, I grew up in Donostia, so it's official there. And I had the chance to go to a public school where I had the immersive system, so I could like learn everything in Euskera. I could also go to high school in Euskera, and I then studied my grade also in my bachelor in Euskera, my master's in Euskera, and I'm doing my PhD in Euskera. So I think that's been there my whole life, and I was quite lucky to have like the choice and the chance to study everything in Basque. Yeah.
Is it classic for Basque people? Is it your example? Is it classic or not?
It depends. It depends. Well, in my case, I studied Basque translation, so of course it should be, well, it's not always, but in that case, it should be in Basque, and it was mainly in Basque. But it depends if you want to learn something else, maybe you have to go out of the Basque country. And especially here in the northern Basque country, there is almost nothing only in Basque in university. So it depends on your context. But mine was a really classical example of someone that came from a really pro-Basque family that wanted to study the language more. I don't know if you all had the option or the opportunity to study it like later in high school or university.
No, for us, like in Buryat, we don't have. Oh no, before like 2014, I think in high school in Buryat State University, we had like a facility like of Buryat language, but also it was closed for some reasons, and the financial finance, it was like cut it off. So I think it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like a political issue or maybe it's more economic issue, but maybe it's connected. I don't know, but like the situation from one side, seems worse and worse, but from other side, I can mention some positive things, like if we continue our discussion.
Yeah, I think they are connected, like politically. Here, the first thing they are always like cutting on the funds is always Basque too. So
Yeah, sounds familiar from over here as well. Radna, quick question. Is there an option, or are there options aside from the 2 hours a week in school? Or like, are there options now for people who are like older and want to learn the language? Is there anything?
Yeah, there are like if you're lucky and you live in the city in Ulan-Ude, in the capital. I saw the opening of schools of Buryat. It is private schools, It's like more commercial things, but it's not that expensive, so you can afford it if you really want. And secondly, you can learn language with online teachers, as me. Yeah, from because my activism started with that, with online teaching, because I'm not a teacher by my diploma or something, but like super activism, and then I became a teacher. So you have two options, to be honest.
Okay, I get it. And Maddi, to answer your question, you can study Sorbian in Leipzig, in Germany. The studies I studied it for 1 semester myself, and I have to say my experience wasn't very positive for a number of reasons, which I don't have to get into now. But to keep it short, there was some chaos within the institute, and it is also very centric on the Upper Sorbian language, the studies. So for me as a Lower Sorb, it didn't feel like I could learn much for my particular language there. But there's actually hope right now because there were many complaints from students towards the institute, and they're now changing a few things, and everyone seems pretty hopeful right now because we need more professionalized Sorbians as well, like more experts on Sorbian language and culture to keep us alive. So having a uni is kind of instrumental to that.
it's crazy how I think we all kind of understand each other in the things that we are living, even though we come from really different parts of the world and really different languages. But that's always something that's crazy to see that the effects of centralization and everything are quite the same. Yeah, I think that was a great also like introduction to our cultural backgrounds, also to see like how we were raised, I think. So today's main topic is self-identity, and it is a really long topic, so let's see how much we talk about it. But first, I think the first language in self-identity is like, how do you identify? Maybe when you are asked, where are you from? Because in our situations, maybe it's not that easy to answer or people won't know. So, Luca, can you start maybe?
I'm so glad you asked because I just had that situation. I was on holiday in Prague for a few days and I met some people there. And every time, of course, the first question when they notice, okay, you don't speak Czech, but it sounds kind of Slavic, they want to know, hey, where are you from? And I always have to answer with, I always say first, it's complicated because it is complicated. And usually I say that administratively and based on my citizenship and passport, I'm German and I do have privileges that come with that. I have German citizenship, I have a very strong passport, and of course, I was also raised in German environment for most of my childhood. But from what I identify with every year that I'm actively living like a Sorbian-centric life, if you will, I find it harder and harder to identify with being German because the more I learn about the history between Sorbians and Germans, and the more I notice how most Germans think about us now, if they think about us, it makes it hard for me to just easily say, "Oh yes, I'm both German and Sorbian," and there's no conflict between that, and it's not hard for me to be both. So right now, I would say I'm Sorbian first and German second, or more by circumstance. Even though, of course, it is still a privilege.
And what did you answer? Like when you're like, do you say, yeah, well, I'm Sorbian? Do you explain what Sorbian means? Or
I have to. Otherwise, people would think I'm Serbian because the words are pretty similar. And in most Slavic languages, then I just go Vujikańskie Serby, and then they sometimes know it. So I say Lusatian Sorbs or Lusatian Serbs. But mostly, and also in German circles that didn't grow up close to Sorbian settlement areas, I usually have to explain, okay, it's like a West Slavic group and blah blah, and we do this and that. We have those languages. That's the situation. I always have this. Basically this entire thing ready, this entire TED talk ready about what it is so people can understand it quickly. I think that's also a shared thing that most of you might know as well. I don't know, Radna, what's up? How's it going for you when
Yeah,
someone
all the
asks?
time you have to explain who are you and where are you from, especially, people, especially in far abroad, not like border, like neighbors of Russia. To be honest, they are shocked that I have a Russian passport. Being being Asian, this is a strong stereotype that I'm like Japanese or something, And even for my own country, when I'm traveling in Russia, it's sometimes also struggling with identification. Even my citizens, from very west of Russia, for example, from Moscow, they don't know anything about Buryats or Siberia. They say, "Oh, you came from really far, why you have a Russian passport or something." Yeah, something like this. But the surprising thing is like my Buryat self-identification had became much stronger. It is very surprising, but it became stronger when I moved from my hometown to St. Petersburg when I started my university. Because I was like when you live in your own culture, you don't value it that much. And when you move somewhere, for example, in St. Petersburg, I understand how different I am, how much unique culture I have, and religion and language and everything. And to be honest, I was only one Asian guy in my facility, in my history group in St. Petersburg State University, and I was like foreigner with Russian passport, but like it was very unique situation. But luckily, we had, in Buryat we have very strong communities in both capital of Russia, in Moscow and St. Petersburg. That's why I had the connection with my group in St. Petersburg, in my diaspora. So like I still have connection with my roots. So it was easier I wasn't alone, to be honest. But my self-identification raised extremely, to be honest.
And like maybe if someone that you don't know were to ask you, like, where are you from? Would you say I'm from Buryatia first or
Yeah,
from Russia, or how does it work in your head?
if it's Russian, if I speak in Russian, I also say I'm Buryat. I never ashamed of telling this or something. I'm telling I'm from Buryatia. I'm Russia. I have Russian passport and I'm Buryat by my nationality. But it's more difficult when people don't know anything about Russia or Siberia, especially in far countries from Russia. For example, when I was in Thailand, they they don't know anything about it, and they don't understand what but you are China like something like this. So it's I so after like 10 or 20 times I struggled to explain. For example, to Thai people, who am I also I all the time I said I'm Mongolian from Russia, is and then they started understanding me, So yeah, basically I used for people who know, who can understand me. I'm telling I'm Buryat, like blah blah blah. It's like Mongolian group of Russia, but from far people who don't know anything, I'm telling that just I'm Mongolian or something like from Russia or like this. It's more easier to understand. It's not, I don't know to explain him like 10th century history.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get
so you go
that.
you go for the easy way then. Like I don't wanna.
Yeah, yeah, but there are some people who don't know even about Mongolians. So sometimes, a couple of times I said that I'm Korean, like or Japanese. It's just for joke, because they don't know even about Mongolia. So it's like it was super exceptional.
And that's when they ask you, but what do you feel? Like, if you were to describe yourself, would you put Buryat first, Russian second, or both at the same level, or only you consider yourself Buryat and not Russian? Like, how would you describe yourself if everyone knew, like for yourself?
The first step is I would tell that I'm Buryat Mongolian. To be honest, it's more historically it's more correct, because before 1937, our region called Buryat Mongolia. So it's like it means we're very closely relative with Mongolia. So I would say like I'm Buryat Mongolian, the first place, and the second only Russian, because I'm very respectful to my passport for my graduation, because I graduated in St. Petersburg. For in Russia we have free education if you go to budget. And because I'm Russian citizen, I I managed to do that, and then only on the third place, I would put my like big Mongolian identification. Like I mentioned about other Mongolian, like Mongolian from Mongolia, I mean Mongols from Mongolia, and Kalmyks, our relatives, like our cousins from Kalmykia on the west, yeah, West Russia.
And Maddi, for you, what do you say when
Uh,
someone asks?
that's a really complicated question to answer, but I will never ever ever say that I'm Spanish or French if it's not for an official paper. I have no ties to Spanish or French identity. Like for me, it is something that's been imposed to me. So I really don't have like any feeling to it. So it depends where I am. If I'm in France or in Spain or in the Basque country, but with French or Spanish people, they will know usually that when I say Basque, and they will try to ask like, "Oh, are you Basque Spanish or Basque French?" That happens, and I'm like, I'm just Basque. I don't want like no, I don't want to end up like, even though I can understand people being like, oh, I want to like ease it up and I don't want to like complicate it too much, so I will just say whatever. But for me, like it's like betraying myself. I really feel it like in my veins if I were to say that I'm Spanish or French, like it would be horrible for me. So that would be here. And when I'm abroad, it depends usually. Um, Yeah, I just usually use like they kind of know what the Basque country is. I say San Sebastian or Guggenheim Museum or now the Basque cheesecake. So I'm like, yeah, I'm from that part, and they are like, oh, so you are Spanish, and I'm like, no, we are not. We have another language, so I kind of explain it. Then also I learned it by heart in many languages how to say like where the Basque country is. It was always like, oh, it's between France and Spain, in the Pyrenees. We are on the coast. Have like a different language, and they're always, oh, it's Andorra. So that's quite funny, but and then also we also have a lot of stereotypes in France and in Spain. So they will always ask us like a lot of really stigmatizing questions. And I don't know, it depends. Like if I'm in Ireland or in the Balkans, like people understand. Like they are like, yeah, okay, we know you, we understand, okay. But yeah, it is always tricky. It is a tricky question to answer, I guess, for me. And yeah, because also like for me personally, and well, for a lot of Basque, but for me, I'm talking from my viewpoint, of course. Being Basque is also tied to like desire of independence, so both of those like converge together. So it's like it would be like betraying myself, like telling that I'm Spanish or French. Like I will never do it. Only in official papers where I'm like I'm forced to do it. So yeah, and then like with my identity, I will just like and I asked a lot of people about it, like a lot of my friends and everything, like, how would you define first yourself? So they were all like, Euskaldun. Euskaldun is the word for Basque. Maybe I will explain later, like, what it means. And everyone says that, like, it is just such an integral part of our identity, being Basque. Like, I couldn't imagine myself not speaking Euskera, not being Basque. So, yeah, that would be pretty much it.
With Basque identity and the Basque idea of independence, is it a strong connection?
Yeah, I won't speak on behalf of everyone because, of course, like everyone has their own opinion. But I think in the group of Basque-speaking people that speak Basque every day and are like aware of the language and are language activists, I think a huge part of it is also tied to independence. Yeah, like if we really want liberation and speak like our language like normally and freely, we have to have our own state. It's also really tied to history, of course, of Western Europe.
Hey, hey.
Because yeah, with Western Europe, and maybe Luca, you can also agree with me on that one, but I think they had like in the 19th century like that whole idea of homogenization and centralization and creating like a culture that's quite artificial too, because they took like many elements of different stuff and then they sell this image of, oh, we are really progressive, but they also hide that they try to erase all the diversity that existed within. So I guess I think I don't know if you understand it, Luca, but
I do. I absolutely do. For me in Germany, I notice a lot that this hiding it away is still going on because if you're not part of a minority group in Germany or you live somewhere where minority groups live, you won't know that there are recognized minorities in Germany, that they have own languages, own rights. It's crazy to me, to be honest, that that's the case because the reason we have so few German speakers, the reason we have so few Sorbian speakers, and the reason our culture is this endangered is Germany. It's Germanization, it's assimilation, and to me it is wild that Germany is not doing anything to educate its citizens about this and is not doing anything to raise awareness around the fact that they have brought a culture down to this small a number. I feel it's a great injustice that isn't talked about at all. I have to explain it again and again. And usually, in most Germans I'm friends with, and in most German circles I'm in, people are very interested in as well and want to learn. So I don't see why we're not talking about it. Yeah, makes me a bit angry sometimes.
maybe we talked about like yeah, we talked about how we identify, but we use tags for it. You used Radna Buryat, Dolnoserbski, Luka, yeah. I used Euskaldun. And the thing is, and there is always a question with it. What does it mean? Well, what does it mean to you? Like, for example, anyone can be under that tag. Should you speak the language? Absolutely, to be a part of the group. or not? Or what do you consider those like linguistic tags? Luka, could you start?
It's a super complicated question that I've especially been thinking about a lot since Higa, actually. So legally, the situation around Sorbians is pretty simple. If you identify as Sorbian, you are Sorbian. That's what it says in the law, in the Sorbian law, basically. And I think that also has its history in, for example, Nazi Germany, lists were made of people of certain groups, and in Germany there's a huge taboo around making lists of certain groups or having subgroups or minorities listed somewhere. I think that's why it is so open to identify with. And generally, I do agree with that because I feel like, for example, for me, it would have been very hard at the start if people would have told me, oh, you're not Sorbian because you don't speak the language. I needed to be able to identify with it to an extent to have the motivation to learn the language. And that's what we wanted, what we need for revitalization. So generally, I'm against gatekeeping people out of a culture if you can tell that they have genuine interest in it and genuinely want to be a part of it. I think people should be allowed, no matter if they speak the language already or what their exact background or connection to it is. That being said, I do feel like if someone is active in the Sorbian community and identifies with Sorbian for a long time, I do feel that they should make somewhat of an effort to at least learn some phrases or try and learn the language if they have the means to do that. Yeah, I think that's summarized, I think. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's very same to Buryat, because we are struggling about self-dedication. To be honest, when I was younger, when I was more, like more involved, like more in our language, I thought like you can be 100% Buryati only if you know our language, as me, But lately, like when I became older and more experienced, I understand that we are if I say like that, I turn away a lot of Buryat who wants to know about our culture, to get know about our language more, but they are scared to be labeled as not like true Buryats or something, and from other conservative Buryats, and that's why nowadays I can share the opinion with Luka. The first thing is self-identification as Buryat, and the second is the knowing about culture patterns, about desire to learn about language, our Buryat language, and also the fact about. I think I can add one more thing. It's like other Buryats have to know and have to consider you as Buryat. For example, even like you're half and you identify yourself as Buryat, it's enough. Or I have cases like we have one researcher from far east from Russia. He's like super Russian, but he moved to Buryatia, learned Buryat language as a researcher, has a Buryat girlfriend. I think it's easy way to like consider him as a Buryat, for example.
I think it's interesting because there's a lot of the cases like your researcher as well in Lusatia. It's always this conversation around can a culture be learned and can you learn an identity, basically. And also, there's also conservative Sorbians who would say, no way, who would call me German for sure. That's especially prominent in Upper Lusatia, and that's just how it is at the moment. In Lower Lusatia, it's much more open, and for example, someone who has lived here for a while and has learned the tradition and identity would be accepted as Sorbian as well and could call themselves Sorbian. I'm not entirely sure why there's this big difference, but it is there. And for me, I do feel like the idea that a culture can't be learned and language can't be learned and you can't kind of develop into an identity, and that identity is this fixed thing you got at birth and that's just how it is, will exclude a lot of people and will make it harder for our language to stay alive.
I agree with both of you. And I also, like, I think it's really hard when you are like a part of a minority language to what kind of strategy to use to create like the language community too. But in our case, Euskaldun, I think it goes in pair with what both of you said. I agree with the desire to learn. I agree also with not gatekeeping people. from joining the community, and also that you can learn the culture. I think it is possible. In our case, Euskaldun. So our case is like we call ourselves Euskaldun, which means in Euskera, in Basque, that you possess the language. So there is like that linguistic little nuance, and there is a great debate about it. There is a great debate. So it has always been there, that word. Like Euskaldun has been out there for centuries. But in the 19th century, with nationalism and romanticism and all of those isms, like there was like this huge uprising in Basque nationalism, which was quite, well, I'm not a fan of it right now, of the way of how it was at that time, but it was really tight. It was Euskaldun meant the Basque, like to be a part of the Basque race, but that changed, of course. Like it's not anymore that way. In the 20th century, there was Krudvig, that he was a Basque philosopher. He said that being Euskaldun means speaking Euskera and also wanting to form a Basque nation. So there was like this added thought for a Basque independent nation also in it, or to create at least or build together that thing. And I think that's the most prevalent meaning of it. But yeah, as you said, it's also tricky. Like in our case, we have Euskaldun, but we also have Basque in French or Basco in Spanish. And we kind of differentiate, like the people that speak the language, we consider ourselves Euskaldun, and the ones that live in the Basque country but don't necessarily like speak the language or know like anything cultural, we call them Basque or Basco, or like, yeah. So there is a little bit of, it's a little bit tricky. Because then you say, okay, where do we put the people that, for example, couldn't learn the language but put their kids in Basque schools to learn the language? Like, do we consider them Euskaldun or not? Or do we consider like our grandparents who were forbidden from speaking Basque for different reasons, that lost it and don't speak it because of trauma? Do we consider them Euskaldun or not? So I think that is nowadays subject to debate, and I really think it is tied to the language, but I think it could also be tied to the desire to speak the language, and also the willingness to learn it and to speak it. Like, I think you could always be like a potential Euskaldun, but in our case, it's really tied to language. It's not tied to ethnicity or anything. I mean, if your parents are from anywhere in the world, you could be Euskaldun. Even more, like, let's say you came when you were a kid from, let's say, from Morocco. There are a lot of people from Morocco. So you consider yourself like maybe Moroccan, but you can be Moroccan and Euskaldun. Like they are not restrictive. Like, so yeah, we have all of those debates.
Yeah, Maddi, I want to ask you about something. Like, you have mentioned that Basque people, they're divided by borders. They divided by like big countries. And what about the dialects between Basque, different Basque groups? And what about the identification, like about French Basques? And you mentioned that your Basque Euskaldun is like super true Basques, yeah? Am I correct? And there are like two levels of Basque. And is it big problem with dialects and about education in different parts of Basque people?
Yeah, there are various levels of identification. I mean, when you have like people that don't speak the language and have various degrees of also like cultural ties to it, you'll have also variations of identities. Like in my case, I'm talking about the viewpoint of someone that grew up speaking Basque or learned Basque at school too, and speaks Basque in their everyday. They speak Basque every day, and they sense like a cultural tie to this land and to this culture. But there are, of course, people like, well, I guess in your countries too, right? Like there's people that live here and don't speak the language and don't have any interest whatsoever for anything related to Basque. Or there are some that are like in the middle, like they maybe don't have much interest, but they put their kids in school to learn a little bit of Basque, not maybe full immersive. So yeah, there is like a great variation. In my case, I'm talking from a point of view of someone that speaks Basque every day and lives in Basque every day. Like, I'm really lucky to do that, and it's entirely possible, even though some people think it isn't. And with dialect, it's really interesting because we have many dialects. So that's also a political choice and historical choice, like whether we consider a language a dialect or some dialect or a language. And in our case, we chose to say that we speak one language, Euskara, but it is divided in 6 main dialects, and they are really different from each other. Like, if we didn't have the Basque standard, we created a standard 60, 70 years ago to help it, like, for the schools and everything. But without the standard, it would be a little bit difficult to understand each other. Like, someone said that, yeah, I think French and Spanish are much more alike in some points than 2 of the dialects, like the 2 corner dialects of the Basque language. And of course, it's also a sense of identity. Like, some people, furthermore, the ones that are from like the true opposite side of the Basque country, they also have a really strong tie to their province, because dialect is also usually tied with the province that you live in. So yeah, like in my case, I come from the central part of the Basque country. Some people do have a really strong sense of Gipuzkoan, it's called Gipuzkoa, identity. I really don't. I have a really like weird backstory of having different dialects around me. My dad speaks one, my mom speaks another, speaks kind of standard. I speak another one with my students here. So I just say Basque, but yeah, that also exists.
Inside of your community, you have like different identifications based on your dialect, right?
Yeah, that's intra-Basque. Like, we consider ourselves Basque, but then, like, for example, if I were to meet someone from, I don't know, Iruña, Pamplona, I would say like, oh, you're from Navarre. Okay, you're Navarrese. Oh, it's so funny. Like, you Navarrese do that. So we also have that intra self-identification that it can be difficult also to explain to people that don't speak Euskera.
No, for Buryat it's the same, because we have like 5 main dialects and one dialect that which is on based on standard on this dialect. I really understand what that mean. So
Yeah.
for example, I'm from North Buryat. There we're very specific. If you speak only one on your dialect, so I prefer when I speak Buryat with my other people who are not from my region, like within Buryatia. I use standard because it's more comfortable and understandable for everyone. Yeah, but I really like my like small dialect, because it's my family tongue and my mother tongue, to be honest. It's very unique within even Buryat language, and sometimes other group of Buryats, they struggling to understand me if I speak really quickly, and they call us like, you say you're starting speaking something like this.
Yeah, I understand you. It's the same thing for us. We have like central dialect that's based, like the standard is based on it, and the same thing that you said. Yeah, that's really funny.
You mentioned like upper and like upper Sorbians, right? It's
Yeah,
the same,
exactly.
right?
So it's kind of interesting that you guys have like a defined standard, because we don't have a standardized Sorbian version that everyone could speak to understand each other, because I think the languages are similar enough that with some practice you can understand each other. And for us, it's kind of also a complicated question. I don't know how it is for you, but in Sorbian history, there's been instances sometimes, for example, of Upper Sorbian being the dominant Sorbian dialect, also imposing certain words and linguistic rules, and kind of writing the dictionaries that were then also used by, or had to be used in Lower Sorbian regions, which actually led some Lower Sorbians to turn away from the language completely because they didn't understand it anymore and it wasn't their language. So it's kind of a bit more of a conflict-laden topic than maybe in other communities, or maybe it's the same in yours. But for us, I think the establishing a standard, you couldn't do it with everyone being happy with it. I think it's a big challenge, and it might be the same for you.
Yeah, it is the same. Like, it's been a struggle to create the standard, and there's people that still aren't happy with it. they decided to use the central dialects as a base because it was the ones that like most people could understand, and not like the ones that are like the farthest from the center. And it's been, yeah, there's still like debates about it. But I think we kind of managed to say, okay, what happens is that we have our dialects that we shouldn't like throw away, but we need a way to unite, like to keep alive, to keep going on, to have like our degrees in Basque, our degrees, our schools in Basque, to teach Basque to adults. We did a unified way. It was a strategy for us. So I think that's what pushed a little bit those debates to the sides. But yeah, it like some dialects really felt that they were forgotten, or they felt like, oh, we were like betrayed. That also still exists. But I think most people understand that it was for the greater good.
Like our religion leader, we called Pandito Hambo Lama, it like Buddhist leader of Buryats. He said, it's more about politic or something about culture thing. But he said like we made a mistake when we chose like East Buryat for being standard instead of choose South Buryat. To understand it, because why he's saying that, because he thinks that it's South Buryat is close to Mongolian. Mostly it's like one language. So I think his point is about today bad situation with language, because it is like a link between Buryatia and Mongolia. If we are lucky to choose South Buryat as a standard, I think we are closer to Mongolia nowadays. It is not really about, it is the same to Basque when they choose the central, because it's understandable for most Buryats, our east was chosen for standard. But nowadays, like, the situation is less it's more harder, and that's why even our Buddhist leaders created a mistake, the fake story about mistake.
I just think it's kind of funny in a way. I'm trying to imagine, like, if we try to actually standardize Sorbian to one language, the one that we can all understand best is the smaller third language I spoke about. The smallest language that I really don't know how many speakers it has. I've heard something of around 10. I think it's probably more than that, but I think it's a very small number. So it would be kind of interesting to see how the bigger Sorbian cultures would react to that in that case. If we said, okay, this is the one we can all understand. It's from the middle, guys. Let's take this one. It would be interesting to see. But it's hypothetics. We can understand each other well enough. And if it's only 2 or 3 languages, it's probably easier as well.
I had a question for you, Radna, because I know Buryat, and you said earlier that Buryat and Mongolian are really close. Like, how do you feel about it? If you go to Mongolia, or if you speak with someone that's from Mongolia, do you speak in Buryat and they speak in Mongol, or do you feel a sense of kinship to it?
Yeah, it's really interesting question. So it was, for me, it was really interesting before I visited Mongolia, because in my mind it was like, oh, we are like, well, historically we are brothers and sisters, and we should understand each other like easily, because our languages are the same. When I was in St. Petersburg, right? But after that, after graduated, I lived there in Ulaanbaatar 1 year. It is the capital of Mongolia, and all my dreams about big Mongolia has failed, because to be honest, it's not that easy to understand. If you are like only Buryat speaker, it's not that easy to understand Mongolian. It's really easier if you don't know anything, but you have to adapt to Mongolian. You have to learn some new words, change your accent. Only if you're lucky. I mentioned if you are South Buryat, but it's like small group of Buryats. on the border with Mongolia. Only if you are there from there you can easily understand them. But from all other Buryats, it's really hard. When you can adopt, you have to adopt. You can choose your language. You can cut words to understand Mongolians. And basically, about in terms of identification, it's we were divided almost 100 and like 40 years maybe already from Mongolia, like in the beginning of 20th century, by in Soviet era. And basically our mindset is very different nowadays, because I think we're westernized and became more Russian mindset because of assimilation and anything. And even culture, I was struggling because, like, I was shocked. For example, I was shocked when in Ulaanbaatar, in the downtown, not far from downtown, it was yurt. Yurt is this like traditional traditional building, of nomads. For me, it was shocking, but for Mongolian people, it's like, oh, it's okay. We're like, it's our culture. Yeah, and also about like some habits, some daily routine, about some food rations. And then anything. I think we are like a bit divided by our countries, but still, they have mindset that Buryats and Kalmyks, they're like our brothers and sisters. But the second thing, I was surprised, and I don't like it about Mongolia, because they think that Mongolia is in the first place. So they're seeing Buryats and Kalmyks and other Mongolians like little brothers. Not not equals. That's why it's the second thing when I was surprised in Mongolia. But anyways, this culture is very close by food, by our buildings, by language, even by religion. We have like a lot of monks who studied in Ulaanbaatar, and it's very really like close. And all of businesses, they go from Ulan-Ude to Ulaanbaatar like daily. And like, yeah, we're very close, but still have difference, nowadays. Not, I can't say that we're one tribe or something. We are like cousins.
I have a more general question that's kind of not tying directly into the topics we had before, but something that's been on my mind since earlier. Um, More about like what identity can also mean personally, or how it can also drive you as a person. Because for me, it's kind of we were talking about what makes like someone who's part of our culture, what makes someone who's part of our minority. And of course, language plays a big part, and other things also play a big part. But for me, it's very interesting because in my case, I knew I was Sorbian from the second I heard my father mention it, from the second I learned about it, even when I wasn't living there. From the second I saw the first Sorbian signs, I knew it had something to do with me, even though I couldn't have possibly, like, no one had told me at this point, like, hello, this is also a thing that's going on in our family. We have these roots. And it's always been something that's been driving me also, and always something that I feel like is a very big part of, not to sound too crazy, but of my life's purpose also as well, to fight for this culture and to be an activist for this culture. And I wanted to know whether you shared this feeling, whether you shared this feeling, and whether you know what I mean when I say, like, you could take basically everything away from me, like my homeland or my language or everything, and I would still be Sorbian. I would still identify with it, and it would still be important to me.
100%. There is a saying in Basque, it's Euskara gure territorio libre bakarra, and it means Basque is our only free land. So for me, you could take everything away from me, but I would always be Basque, I think. And I think even though, like, for some people that wasn't my case, but I know people that didn't learn it at home or learn it at school or later, like my mom, she learned it when she was also an adult, and she hasn't like Basque roots. My grandfather was from southern Spain, but for her, like, it was such an important thing to fight for and a huge part of our identity. Like, no, it's not. It's a huge part. It's like, I think it's like the center of our identity. Like, you could take away everything from me, and I would always like be Basque. And yeah, I think there is like this really deep sense of belonging to a culture, a place. Also, I think it's really tied to resistance to see that we still are here. They've tried to erase us like so many times, so many centuries. Like this last century has been really harsh on Basque with many prohibition laws and everything. And we still are here fighting. So I just can't fathom not fighting for the language and not speaking Basque. Like it will be really for me a huge disrespect to all my I don't know, like the ones that were before fighting for us. And yeah, I completely agree with what you said. I don't know how it is for you, Ratna.
No, yes, it's completely, yeah, mostly I'm agree with that because Buryat language is my mother language. Like I always put it in my first place. Wherever I have traveled, where I have been, I always remember that I'm Buryat in first, and only then I'm Russian, and only that I'm like Mongolian, like a big Mongolian family. And to be honest, it's really important for me to save our language and to make sure that my children will know about our language and culture. And even if I will be far from my home, I will represent like Buryat people from the best side, you know. Even for you guys, you know. Maybe you will never met another Buryats, you know, other Buryat people, and you will have information, you will have image about our people only from me, you know. That's why it's really important for indigenous people, like small communities, to be good, you know, to be best of your people, you know.
There's just certain struggles and certain issues that we all can relate to in one way or another. Of course, we live in different states under different governments. It's easier for some minorities than for others. But in general, I feel like there were just these phenomena that one person, for example, at Higa already said, "Oh yeah, for us, everyone kind of is kind of burnt out because everyone has to do so much because there's so few people," and just five other people were like, "Oh, same." And that's kind of the feeling I take away here again, that there's like super similar things and things that if you're from one minority culture, you will understand other minority cultures to an extent, and you will understand what they're going through. And it's kind of like, even though we're all from very different cultures, it's kind of like there's a bigger connection of being a minority or a minoritized group, speaking a minoritized language. And I think that was cool to see at Higa, and it's cool to see now how there's just like this kind of almost like a very big culture of being minoritized and having this experience is kind of connecting us all, even though all cultures are kind of small. So that was kind of cool to see. That's something I'm taking away.
Yeah, Luca, it's really interesting, and the main point that I made it for myself, it is about as you mentioned, is about acceptance about inside of your community, because only if you are like united in within your community, you can be stronger, you can be more progressive, more producive, you know, about your culture, about your community, about your anything that you're producing for your people, you know. That's why I only strengthen my faith about acceptance, not about only about my self-acceptance, but also about acceptance of my community, of our people, whatever they are live, whatever they doing, you know, even they're like live in Australia, being so far and being Buratian still, you know. Yeah, it is about acceptance, about your presentation of your community, about your culture, you know, wherever you've been.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think it's always really a really strong emotion to feel that you share something that you only think your minority group goes through, but in the other like side of the world. So that's, I think, a really special kind of feeling. And it was really surprising for me, like to see that, for example, like I had so much in common with you guys in Buryatia. even though it's in the other side of the Eurasian like macro continent, I was like, wow, like a lot of things that you said, and even like the strategies that were used in the language, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like they are really similar. So I guess it's always something that I really learned was like seeing how far away also we can find like really similar stuff. And I think it's also really interesting what I can take away from this is that again that this notion of our struggles being like systemic and under like also a global level. I liked a lot of, I think it was Radna that said that you said it. I like the desire to learn the language stuff. Like I had thought about it, but like maybe not in that way. I also really liked thinking about what Luca said. Can you learn a culture? I think we don't talk like explicitly that way, but I guess it could be interesting to here in the Basque Country. But overall, it was really really interesting, and I think it was really enriching also to hear from you guys. So thank you for sharing really your thoughts, your time, and what you had to say too.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so nice to hear from other parts of the world.